So a lot of you mentioned that you are kind of in jobs that you love that you never thought you would get into. So can you tell us more maybe about like your first entry into fashion and how that happened?
Oh,
Who wants to start?
okay, so this is really my first entry into fashion, this current job. I actually have a background in graphic design, and so I went to undergrad for art history and visual arts, then studied graphic design, and then sort of went in different jobs in different companies. I worked in television, where I actually did, I guess, work for. This keeps happening. Where I did actually work for. We were trying to bring back like a television show into an online magazine that was fashion related called Full Frontal Fashion, and so I worked on that project, which was sort of a glimpse into the fashion world, and then worked at Time Inc. for a little bit on 2 of the brands there. So I sort of had like a little bit of fashion experience, but this is really was a whole new world really for me to become a part of a fashion and beauty company. And because my role is more on like the design and product side, still a lot of it is like still new to me, but that's okay. Like I'm learning, and I love learning about new products and everything every day. But I mean, I think it's okay to not have a background in that, and to also sort of, if you do have a background in it and then be in something totally different, I think there's always things that you can take from every experience and bring into your new experience. And you can always learn, so that's always good.
So I'm one of those people that just packed up my stuff and moved to New York without a job the week of graduation. And so Refinery 29 was my first job in general, let alone in fashion. And I started off just doing Google traffic and kind of optimizing for SEO. And I liked it, but it wasn't what I loved. And I realized that I really wanted to do with editorial strategy and figuring out like why we write what we write. And we had a marketing team giving us insights and the editorial team taking them, but there was this huge gap because marketing team loves talking graphs and editorial team does not love graphs. And there was just like this disconnect. And so I basically just went to them and said, hey, I feel like this position needs to happen. I would love to do it. This is kind of the job that I want. And that's kind of how I got to where I am now. They were like, you're right, definitely. And so got to fill in.
So I told you guys I started at Target, and it was totally random. I'm not one of those people who went to school for fashion. I didn't want to do it. Actually, my ideal dream job would be being Anthony Bourdain, getting to travel and drink and eat. But I randomly fell into it, and it's something that's continued to be interesting for me. Target was a great place to learn all about it because they teach you everything that you could ever imagine and ever need to know. And you do a lot of things. You do a lot of jobs. So at that job, I was exposed to, allocations, design, product development, technical design, like fabric, sourcing, everything that you could ever imagine. You have to do it. And so that was really, after getting to do everything there, I was like, oh, well, it's still interesting. The product is fresh. Even if you're doing the exact same thing every single day, the product is always fresh. And the actual number of times that I've done the same thing 2 days in a row is 0. So that's always something that kept me interested. But it was really random, like completely. I just dropped my resume online and they flew me out there and gave me a job. And I was like, well, this seems like a good place to go. And so I went.
Wow. Well, for me, I feel like I am in this stage of my career sort of getting away with the biggest caper of all time. I'm a makeup artist, you guys, and I started off going to NYU for musical theater. So I always had this passion for artistry, and I continued to pursue it even when my business streams and sort of my career goals sort of got a little bit muddy. I always wanted to feed my artist and stay true to my artist and carve out time for that artist. And when the opportunity at LIM Export came up, I was at MAC Cosmetics on and off for about 10 years and ended my career actually right around the corner at the Fifth Avenue flagship. That was my store. I opened that store. So for me, it's been about melding so many different parts of myself and wearing so many different hats depending on the day. I can be a makeup artist one day, I can be a manager of artists one day. I have about 200 artists that are currently on the Glam Squad network that I'm in charge of managing and making sure their quality is really consistent. I'm also in charge of doing press at Glam Squad, so I might have to do an on-camera interview for Glam Squad and utilize that theater training, or whether I'm doing a spot for Revlon where I'm having to do teleprompter work. So what I want to say with all of that is that every single experience you have is completely relevant. every single situation you go into, there's an opportunity to learn a skill, to expand your skills, and to be really smart about it, and be okay that you maybe don't know it, and be able to ask those questions. You know, I didn't know what Q1 was when I started at Glam Squad, or Q2. I had no idea what that meant. I'm, again, makeup artist. If you want to know about wing liner, I gotcha. So yeah, being able to ask those questions, being okay, and honing those skills, but feeding the artist at the same time is super important to me.
So yeah, it sounds like obviously like there were a lot of learning points within all of your different experiences. Kind of what do you think was the most important in like being able to gain new skills like every day? Like was it kind of reaching out to other people? Was it researching on your own? Like what do you think helped you the most in kind of becoming the multifaceted person you are now?
Sorry.
I think it's kind of a mix of what you said. So I think with starting a new business, there's so many things that you don't know, like again, Q1 and Q2, but like, you know, a million other things, whether it's analytics or for me, like both of my business partners come from a legal background that I know nothing about that, and now I like can sort of semi-understand contracts and like financial statements, and you know, it's like about really relying on people in your network that know how to do that stuff, and that you can call and say like, please explain this to me, and like not being afraid to ask. And I think also it's like the Google, like there's so much stuff that you can learn, and you just have to be willing to spend the time and like care about actually being good at that stuff. Like if you don't care and you don't want to learn it, you're not going to. So I think just spending the time actually, whether it's talking to a person, reading a book, like going to a seminar, like, or, you know, reading something on the internet, like I think there's ways to learn everything. You're not going to be good at everything, but at least you can, you know, have an understanding of most things that you're doing on a day-to-day, or that you have to kind of pick up and learn as you go.
I think the biggest thing is saying yes. We're really good at saying like, no, I don't know how to do that, or no, I like don't have that skill. But as Pooja said, like you can learn the skill. So if it's something that intrigues you, if it's something that you think maybe down the line you want to go into, and you know, a boss or someone's coming to you with this opportunity, or a friend who's doing a startup and they want you to get involved, don't say no just because you're scared, because then you're never actually going to get there. Say yes and you can figure it out. I mean, if it doesn't interest you, then say no. But if it's something that's interesting and you think you could see yourself doing that in the future, start it now. Like just say yes, and that could be your next passion.
I think for me, the number one thing was always assuming that the people that you're talking to know more than you do. I think after a certain point, you kind of know what you know. But at the beginning especially, I always assumed that everyone knew more than I did, and I wasn't afraid to say, I have no idea what you're talking about, like tell me more, I'm so interested in this, or just learning. And I think, you know, kind of what Rebecca said as well, always saying yes. So you get projects and I'd be like, I have no idea what you're talking about, but 100% I'll figure it out and I'll do it. And you learn so much just by doing. And then I think the second thing is always talking to as many people as possible. You know, at Target it was huge. And so I could talk to people in assets protection one day, I could talk in legal, I could talk in fabric, like technical, like actual like weight and that kind of thing. Because the number one thing is people always like to talk about themselves if they think that you're interested. So, you know, as much as you can, glean everybody else's knowledge so that you can know at least a little bit about a wide array of topics, so that you can always say yes to those kinds of things.
My biggest rule when it comes to this topic is not apologizing for the experience you have. One of my biggest pet peeves is when either an artist or a colleague or anyone comes to me and the first thing out of their mouth is, I'm sorry, I don't know how to do this. And it's like, don't apologize. You know what you know, and you're here because you know what you know, and I'm happy that you know what you know, and I'm happy to share my knowledge, and I'm also not saying that I'm not going to learn something from you in that process too. So the whole like, oh, I'm sorry, or oh, I don't know how to do this. It's okay. It's okay to be blatant. It's okay to be blatant with your past experiences, because it will only expand the array of colors that you have to provide something to someone. I'm pretty blatant about the fact that I didn't go to school for what I'm doing now, and I think it's okay. I think that you can't apologize for that. So stand true to yourself and don't be afraid.
Yeah, kind of along those lines, how did all of you kind of apply your background, your education to maybe your first job. So what skills or what classes or activities did you highlight when finding that job?
So my first job was at an art gallery, which was also sort of a startup. They were an online art gallery that is now like a little bit bigger. And so, I mean, none of the art there was anything that I had really studied in school. So it was like a lot of, again, learning. But I think it's just, in school you really learn how to learn new things, learn things that like you're maybe afraid to learn or like afraid to kind of take on, and just like really work hard. And I think that that's really for your first job, or even if it's somewhat related to what you're doing, obviously you can take some of those learnings and apply it to things, but for the most part, if it's your first job, you're going to be exposed to a lot of things that are uncomfortable or not something that you've ever done before. And I think it's just, again, like a willingness to be open and learn and apply whatever you can, but then just also be willing to say, like, I don't know how to do this, like, can you just show me, or can you just help me? But I think, again, it's like I studied art history and visual arts, but that gallery, like I did everything from like hanging paintings to like traveling on exhibitions and trying to do sales, which I was so bad at and I'm still really bad at. And so, you're just going to be uncomfortable and you have to be okay with that.
So I studied journalism in school, and I always thought like, oh, I want to go into print. And then at some point, I kind of started talking to people and realized the people who were in the industry were talking about how they were having to write these stories that they didn't want to write. And I realized that I wanted to keep writing in my life, but I didn't want to learn to hate it. So I started really doing all of my internships in the kind of the digital aspect and the analytics. And I had no experience in that and really didn't have classes in it, but I went and had my first internships, learned a lot about SEO. And then when I came back to school my senior year, really focused on internet, went to internet conferences, got that knowledge base. So then when I went for jobs, I had that experience, but I still didn't really have any analytics experience, and I got an analytics job. And it was one of those things where I was very upfront, being like, I want to learn this. I have no experience in it. And learned on the job, asked people's questions, figured out how to do it. And then the two kind of come together. Like the reason why when I'm looking at analytics, I'm able to really help the editorial team is because I have that background and I do write and I do edit and I have that experience. So everything kind of goes together, and you can find ways to get all of your passions in one job or like one experience.
Sorry, firstly, can I ask you guys to put your phones away? Sorry, it's just a little distracting because I'm looking at you and I can see your phone. Okay. Secondly, I really like sitting next to Rebecca because I can always piggyback off of what she's saying, which is great. I'm like, yes, that's exactly what I wanted to say. One of the biggest, I think, lies that higher education tells you is that it's going to be exactly like this. Like I literally did econ for the government as my first job, and my two majors were econ and government. But it wasn't anything like what college was. I will say, I think the most important things that you can take away from college are, how to manage your time, how to prioritize things, how to keep yourself organized. And I'm the number one proponent of, I think, whatever job you end up having, whatever career path you end up going, whatever direction you end up going in, you become specialized because you keep doing it. So for example, I work on the wholesale side, so I work with a lot of account executives who do sales. And really, I have a friend who works at a hedge fund as well, and we can talk almost the same language, because if you're talking mutual funds or if you're talking Jimmy Choo's, you're still talking sales, and you're still talking, at the end of the day, everyone's trying to make money. So we can actually have an intelligent conversation with each other, even if we know nothing about the specialized aspects of each other's jobs. So I think this is especially important, I think, for this particular session, because any skill that you learn in any job, if you're a manager, if you are learning to take direction, if you're prioritizing your time, all of that stuff can be generalized boiled down, I think, to one or two important skills, where it's like, for this job, when I was a sous chef, for example, when I was cooking, I learned how to take inventory, how to manage all of the money, how to order the right number of heads of lettuce for a day, depending on what day it was, or how many onions to chop before the service actually began. And those are things that I think can be applied anywhere. So it's, okay, so I learned how to manage my time. I learned how to watch traffic patterns. I learned what the demand was on any given day. To be able to forecast in advance what you need for X, Y, and Z. And those are skills that if you're talking about mutual funds, or if you're talking about shoes, if you're talking about onesie pajamas, it's all the same kind of language, as long as you make sure that you're always speaking the language of the person that you're trying to talk to.
Absolutely, yes. So to add a little bit to that, just from my personal experience, my first job out of college was a receptionist. I was a receptionist at a very high-end gym, and one of the reasons that I wanted to do that were several reasons: health and hotness, obviously, but secondly, because I knew that it would be creating a network for myself, because the people that were going to this gym were all people who I aspired to be. And so I was able to make these really quality connections, because ultimately in my head, I'm a makeup artist. I get to show up to work every single day. I get to create this skill for myself of remembering names and remembering certain details about people that have only come in handy as I've continued to grow my professional network. And they're people that I continue to run into now when I'm either touching their faces or I'm pitching to them what LIM Squad is up to right now. So the big takeaway for me for that is that just no job is beneath you when you're in your groundwork years. You have to give yourself permission in the first couple years outside of school, even while you're in school, to lay the groundwork. And no job is beneath you while you're trying to do that, because every one of those experiences, whether you're washing my brushes or whether you're getting coffee for someone, you're going to learn something that will come in handy later. And give yourself permission. Don't be mad they're not making six figures, right? When you're out of the gate, it's not going to happen that way. You have to take the time to build those core set of skills that might get wackier and they may seem irrelevant at the time, but they will come in handy.
So I guess for some of you who may have interviewed or hired, I know Rebecca, this is your first job, I'm in my first job as well, but so say you're interviewing a recent grad, what skills really pop out to you when you're evaluating new candidates, and what's something that everyone here might be looking to highlight on their resumes?
I think being a really good communicator, whether it's in the actual interview or the follow-up or in your actual job, having communication skills, especially in the work that I do, it's a lot of emailing and a lot of back and forth and a lot of communicating with the team. I just want to know that you're really good at multitasking, and also communicating and keeping in touch with people, I think is really key. And I think a lot of times in a business things can get lost, and if you have a very small team and you're not communicating with one another, things get really messed up. And so when we are only 5 people, and so every single person matters and makes a huge difference. And for us, whenever we're interviewing someone, we want to know, number one, are you willing to do things that are not exactly on your resume or not exactly within your skill set? Are you willing to take that chance and learn things that you're uncomfortable with? And then 2, are you a good communicator, and are you going to keep in touch? Are you going to let me know when things are not working, or when you're having trouble, or if you aren't having trouble, whatever it is? Those are 2 really important things to me.
So I'm actually in the process of building a team, so I'm doing a lot of interviews right now to hire people. So there's actually 4 things that I've looked at for everyone. The first one is, are you being who you are, who you think you want, that you think that I want you to be? It's really easy when I can tell that you're trying to be the Refinery 29 girl, and you're so uncomfortable. So if you are giving me something that I know we just put in a story and that's your answer, and it's awkward, or you're wearing this outfit that you're clearly uncomfortable in, I don't want to hire this weird version of someone that I already have at my company. I would rather hire you. So that's very, so be comfortable, just be comfortable, be honest. If you don't know something, you can say, I don't know, but I would love to learn that skill, and I will do this to learn it, and that's fine. Something else is, when people ask you, what's your weakness? Please, please, please do not say, I'm a perfectionist. Every single person said it, and I was automatically, I stopped listening. That actually might be your weakness, but just don't say it because everyone's saying it. Say something that's very unique to you, so it doesn't sound like you're coming from a book. Even if it's I'm not good with names, that's great. I haven't heard that today, so that's awesome. And be willing to say what you want to do. I asked people, so if you got this job, what would you want to accomplish? Think of what you want to accomplish. It doesn't have to be exactly what my plan for the job is, as long as I can tell you care. And then the 4th one is something we actually touched on in the panel just a second ago. Put a thank you card. If you don't send a thank you card, I don't care what you said in the interview, really. That's what a sentence.
Yeah. I think it's such an intangible thing, but I think genuine ambition, I think, and hunger to actually be at the place that you're interviewing for. And that's not something that you can fake. So you actually have to really want the jobs that you are interviewing for, or have a lot of interviews under your belt and be able to fake that. That's also a learned skill. I think it's very important. But I think also, you know, this is a great example. My boss and I just hired, well, not just, maybe like 6 or 7 months ago, hired a girl as our wholesale coordinator who's fresh out of college and she's young. But she literally told my boss in an interview, I want your job. And that is specifically when my boss came out and said, oh, I really want this girl to work for us because she has a vision, she knows what she wants, and I mean, she is great. I think another thing, especially for people coming out of college that you just automatically get a ding, is being too millennial. As in, you know, like I deserve this without doing any of this. Like I have a 3-page resume, I do this, and actually, this is a great example. We got this girl email. I think she looked up on LinkedIn every single person who has Jimmy Choo in their profile and sent a cold email to every one of us, including the president, the head of HR North America, myself, some interns because they had it on their profile, and just, you know, it was this resume, and she was like, I think I'd be so great at your company. I have a lot to bring to the table. It was a 2-page resume, and it was, you know, like, I get that you have experience, but at the same time, executives who have been working for 20 years don't have 2-page resumes. Nobody needs a 2-page resume. And we will actually just delete people with 2-page resumes because you don't have that much experience. And then she followed up a day later and said, I'm sorry, this was an old version of my resume. Please see updated. Can't wait to hear from you. And these are skills, I mean, proofreading I think is really important. Knowing where your level is another really important thing. I'm not saying don't reach above, because sometimes that's what you got to do. You just reach above and say, yeah, of course I can do this. Like currently I'm the head of wholesale planning. You know, I was running all of denim for Lucky Brand, but before that I had been like an associate buyer at Target, you know, and they were just like, we think that you would be great for this, and they came around. And I didn't say, I don't think I'm qualified for this. I was like, if you think I'm qualified, I know I'm qualified. So you just go for it. But at a certain point, you have to be humble with what you are, where you've been, and the experience that you have. And especially coming right out of college, it is a willingness to do crappy stuff, like make copies and put packets together and get coffee. But you know, in our organization, everybody from the president to our coordinators to our interns get coffee sometimes, depending on who's available to do it. Mm-hmm. Making packets, you know, like printing decks, making decks, you know, all that stuff. It's not glamorous, and it's not, this is exactly what I wanted to do, is make a PowerPoint presentation, but everyone's got to do it, and you have to put your dues in. So I think, you know, and this goes off of what Kelly said, is nothing is beneath you. And coming in with an attitude of, you know, like, I'm so great, I graduated from this school, that is beneath me, is absolutely the wrong attitude to have.
Totally. You know, D, all of the above. Yeah, I think in addition to all of the, you know, bread and butter professional things that you guys should be really considering when you're interviewing, when you're just out of college, yes, the power of the thank you note. Yes, the power of, you know, constant gentle pressure, following up with people and creating your network and maintaining it and taking detailed notes and being organized, all of that stuff. To borrow a phrase from someone, it kind of at the end of the day is all about the hang. I'm at a company where, you know, I was at someone's desk in their home on 9th Street before we even had, literally, before we even had an office, of which we've been in for 6 months, and already we are expanding, you know, to something that's 6 times the size of that. So at the end of the day, the people who are getting the jobs at, I know, my company and the companies that I aspire to be with are people that I can look at the middle of the day at 3 o'clock in the afternoon when I'm inundated with 65 emails, and I can go, oh my God, are you dying? Because I'm dying over here, how are you doing? That you feel like you're in it with. You feel like you have a collaborative attitude, and that you're someone who you would want to collaborate with. not giving pushback, being open to ideas, all of those skills that maybe don't read necessarily in a resume, but that you can showcase in an interview. I think those are really important. Being your most authentic self and being okay with saying what it is that you're really good at and showcasing that through your interpersonal actions. Yeah.
Awesome.